Alright guys, we got a beefy, and I do mean beefy TWAB this week. Now I'm not going to dissect the whole thing, just the big things here. I'll try to keep this as short as I can as well, but it is a really long TWAB guys, so we'll see what we can do. Thankfully there's a lot of good here, and maybe one or two things not so good, but as a whole this was actually a very good TWAB, especially for PvP. So let's start with the good though, yeah? To start, airborne effectiveness. Here's what the TWAB said. Airborne Effectiveness. We introduced the Airborne Effectiveness AE system in Season 17 to give us levers to balance weapon effectiveness while airborne in a consistent and comprehensive way. We did this in preparation for a sandbox that's introducing more airborne gameplay options, particularly with the Strand subclass in Lightfall. We had two primary reasons for this. It's important to balance the increasing number of airborne movement options against their combat effectiveness, as we don't want Destiny 2 to shift excessively towards airborne gunplay over time. In a game where most modes did not have skill-based matchmaking, SBMM, players using an airborne playstyle could be extremely oppressive. The first reason remains true, but the second has become less relevant as SBMM has rolled out across more PvP modes, and despite achieving our goals, the cost and player fun was too high. After observing for a season, we made some updates in each subsequent weapon balance update while starting on a larger rework in Lightfall. We've been playtesting these changes for a while now, and are confident we can safely pull them into the Season 19 mid-season balance update. Airborne effectiveness affects the following aspects of weapons. These affect both mouse and keyboard as well as controller unless otherwise noted. Auto-aim, aka bullet bend, corrects bullets towards a target within the auto-aim cone. Precision angle threshold controls how far away you can be from a head and still get a headshot instead of a body shot from auto-aim. Magnetism, aka reticle friction and adhesion, controller only, slows down your reticle when it passes over a target. Accuracy, controls how much bullets spread out with repeated firing. Spread angle, pellet shotguns only, controls the width of a shotgun spread pattern. With this update, you can expect a primary weapon with no investment, i.e. at the default AE stat of a weapon, to be as accurate, i.e. shoot just as straight, as a primary weapon with the Icarus script mod equipped did before the introduction of AE. The auto-aim angle is also significantly improved, and the magnetism penalty has been eliminated. Instead of relying on accuracy and aim assist penalties, we're requiring more precision to land crits while airborne. This means your guns will behave more like they do when grounded, except that you must aim right at the head to get a headshot unless you really build for airborne gameplay. One side effect of this change is that airborne gameplay on controller should feel better than ever before, with moderate investment since we've reduced the airborne magnetism penalty below what was in the game before AE. We still don't want it to be too easy to build into AE with special weapons, but we believe we have a space to reduce the penalties on shotguns and sniper rifles. We may revisit this later. In playtesting, this makes baseline airborne gunplay feel substantially better, and building into AE feels more rewarding. Specifics: primary weapons, aim assist, reduce all primary weapon auto-aim, bullet bend penalties by 60% at 0 AE for both mouse and keyboard and controller. Increase the precision angle, how far off ahead you can be and still have auto-aim give you a headshot instead of a body shot by 50% at 100 AE. Change the curve to be exponential so you'll get more benefit at high AE for M&K and controller. Removed all additional primary weapon magnetism reticle friction penalties, and at 60 to 100 AE you get a magnetism bonus compared to pre-AE for controller only. Reduced airborne accuracy penalty on all primary weapons per weapon type: hand cannon and sidearm 60%, auto rifle, scout rifle, pulse rifle, and submachine guns 20%, bows 30%. Special weapons, sniper rifles and slug shotguns reduce base airborne accuracy penalty by 50%. Pellet shotguns, fully removed airborne accuracy penalty. Very good move from Bungie. This has the potential to make aggressive play more viable overnight. Admittedly, maybe Lemonarch shouldn't get that AE buff, but outside of that, this is a really good move. Next up, weapon types. Submachine guns, SMGs, have long been heavily dependent on the range stat to be competitive. SMGs with a high range stat easily outclass all other SMGs and low-range auto rifles and hand cannons. We recently made a change that brought these higher range options more in line, but the difference between them and other SMGs was still too large, and some special case offenders that could hit nearly maximum range were still a bit too strong. As such, we've made a large improvement to SMG performance at lower range values, combined with a small decrease at the higher range values. General, increase damage and aim assist fall-off start at 0 range by 30%, reduce damage and aim assist fall-off start at 100 range by 6%. Adaptive SMGs lag behind lightweights in effectiveness, dealing more body shot damage but much less critical hit damage despite sharing the same rate of fire. To narrow this gap, we have increased their critical hit multiplier, which makes them feel more rewarding in skilled hands and increases their lethality against certain resilience values. Increased critical hit multiplier from 1.44 to 1.5, crit damage goes from 16.2 to 16.9. We inadvertently skipped Forensic Nightmare when we adjusted the zoom of other SMGs, so we're correcting that oversight. Increased Forensic Nightmare's zoom from 13 to 14. Pulse rifles are very potent in the current meta for a multitude of reasons. Their effectiveness and ease of use at longer ranges makes it hard to close the distance to challenge them with many other weapons. This is especially true on M&K, where the normal effective range is significantly increased by the tighter bullet spread of each burst. The current map rotation, which is scheduled to change in Lightfall for both competitive, Crucible, and quick play, heavily favors the ranged playstyle, and airborne effectiveness has made airborne play more difficult. With those things in mind, we didn't want to hit pulse rifles too hard and without seeing the effects of the other changes on the overall sandbox, but we have reduced the top end range of pulse rifles on all input types and increased their native recoil on M&K to bring their ease of use more in line with controller. These changes should come to make pulse rifles less effective at longer ranges without hurting players who choose to use them more actively. General, reduced aim assist fall-off start at 100 range by 10%, reduced damage fall-off start at 100 range by 5%, increased recoil by 20% on M&K only. The BXR-55 Battler is by far the most effective legendary pulse rifle, in large part due to being extremely strong up close with the legacy frame intrinsic and highly lethal at long range with best in subfamily zoom. We felt the fantasy of the gun fit better with the CQB hipfire aggressive style of gameplay, so we have brought the zoom down to more closely match standard lightweight pulse rifles, which will open some space for other options to work in. Reduced BXR-55 Battler zoom from 20 to 18. The mid-season 18 sidearm aim assist fall-off buff had the desired effect of encouraging players on both input devices to experiment with sidearms. After letting the meta settle, sidearms have cemented themselves as very strong contenders in close quarters engagements, but they are exceeding their intended effective range by a small amount. We've walked back the buff slightly to pull them in and give other lower range primary weapons a little more room to thrive. General, reduce the season 18 aim assist fall-off distance buff from 30% to 20%. So some more really solid choices here. SMGs really shouldn't be able to reach into mid-range as effectively as they do. This will definitely help hand cannons and auto rifles that sit on the lower end of the range spectrum. Not to mention, damn Bungie, that's a pretty solid pulse rifle nerf right there. Kind of surprising that this has really been the season of the pulse rifle though, right? Regardless, another solid move. As weird as it sounds, because I'm a big fan of the BXR, I'm happy to see the zoom reduced. The BXR is one of the few pulse rifles out there that feels good for more aggressive play, and for that purpose, I personally actually tend to prefer a lower zoom. I also am really glad they mentioned map rotation here, and that apparently that's scheduled to change with Lightfall, because the heavy focus on long-range maps has just gotten ridiculous. As far as the sidearm nerf goes, this will also help auto rifles and hand cannons. Granted, we'll see how this plays out. To be perfectly honest, on some sidearms, such as Drang, crits don't really feel all that necessary as they do on other weapons, but even so, this is probably still a good move. Next up, we have some exotic changes. Dead Messenger can be oppressive to play against, as the triple wave pattern can easily be combined with a number of abilities or other weapons to effectively one-hit kill a player, so we've brought the damage down significantly to make such playstyles less effective. With this change, it still has use cases in PvP and hasn't been changed at all in PvE, but is a lot less frustrating to play against. Reduced wave splash damage against players by 35%. Oh my god, they actually did it. Dead Messenger is getting a nerf. This is pretty big, especially combined with our AE getting buffed. This could make Dead Messenger a hell of a lot less effective, which would be really nice because God knows it is certainly one of the most frustrating weapons to play against, so this is really good. I'm happy to see this. Next up, Dead Man's Tail tweak in the 6.3.0 update, switching its aiming from preferring body shots to preferring crits, had a much more dramatic effect than expected. The weapon was initially tuned around it preferring body shots. This meant it had a larger aim assist cone to compensate, and once this was addressed, it spiked in effectiveness. At the same time, a damage penalty for hitting maximum stats of Cranial Spike never felt good, that was true. We've pulled back various hipfire tuning to make hip firing at long ranges much harder and remove the Cranial Spike penalty. Remove the damage penalty for 5 stacks of Cranial Spike, reduced hipfire and airborne aim assist cone angles by 25% on M and K, reduced hipfire cone angle bonus scaling from 20% to 5%, reduced hipfire precision aim cone angle from 3 degrees to 0.8 degrees, reduced hipfire auto aim fall off scaler from 1.5 to 1.1. Holy shit, DMT2. Bungie better be careful here, they're gonna turn me into a fanboy at this rate. But next up, we do have a slight change to Revoker. Here's what the TWAB said. We're seeing Revoker usage increase as more PvP modes have power level removed. The Reversal of Fortune perk is extremely strong, particularly in combination with certain playstyles. Ultimately, we decided to cap the maximum return on this one by requiring multiple misses to return one shot. Now triggers on 2 misses within 6 seconds. Yeah, this is probably good. Revoker was definitely getting a little too potent, especially inside of comp. But moving on, they have some future changes that they wanted to talk about as well. So coming in Lightfall, we're doing a heavy weapon balance pass, adding to subclass 3.0 verbs to several exotic weapons, tuning kinetic weapons, and adding a new perk to make kinetic weapons more valuable. In post-Lightfall seasons, we'll be shipping some updates we're pretty chuffed about. More substantial changes to weapon hipfire reticles with the goal of exposing more information specific to weapon types or exotic functionality. A full auto melee setting. Another set of craftable, reprised raid weapons within our origin trait, similar to what we did with the Deepstone Crypt weapons in Season 19. Regular, seasonal, and mid-season balance updates, and more. So the full auto melee seems interesting, but it might just be better to work on how janky they are first. Regardless, maybe this could make melee fights a little less frustrating. I'm really curious about what the next set of craftable raid weapons will be, given that it's a reprised raid. Not sure what they will be, but I'm really hopeful that they might either be Vault of Glass or Last Wish. Those would be my first choices anyway. Regular season and mid-season balance updates hopefully means that they won't be as slow with PvP balancing in the future, at least that's kind of what I'm getting from that, hopefully. More changes to hipfire reticles, presumably that just means we'll see more weapons get custom reticles like shotguns recently did. Now moving on, they wanted to talk about Citan's Ramparts. Increase the cooldown of the barricade ability while Citan's Ramparts are equipped by 70%. Increase the amount of damage players deal to a Citan's barricade by 25%. This should decrease how often one sees a Citan's barricade in a PvP match, as well as add more opportunities for effective counterplay. Man, Bungie's really coming in hot there. That is a massive nerf to Citan's. Really happy to see that. They also immediately talked about abilities after this as well. So in patch 6.3.0.5, scheduled to be released the week of January 24, we are releasing some ability changes that we've been playtesting in Lightfall to address some outliers in both PvE and PvP. In the Crucible, class ability uptime has inflated significantly over the course of the last year, so we're increasing the base cooldown of Barricade, Thruster, and Dodge by 20%. Increase base cooldown time of the following class abilities by 20%. Barricade. Towering Barricade base cooldown increased from 40 seconds to 48 seconds. Rally Barricade cooldown increased from 32 seconds to 38 seconds. Thruster base cooldown increased from 30 seconds to 36 seconds. Dodge, Marksman's Dodge, base cooldown increased from 29 seconds to 34 seconds. Gambler's Dodge, base cooldown increased from 38 seconds to 46 seconds. So already some steps being taken to address ability spam. The Barricade nerf in particular is very nice, given that with the Citan's nerf, I'd imagine people crutching on Citans would just immediately switch over to Overshield Barricades. That being said, I do think a Overshield Barricade should specifically have a higher cooldown than a normal barricade as well. The Thruster nerf does seem kind of odd. I don't have as much of an issue with movement abilities, but it is what it is. As far as dodge goes, my issue with dodge was primarily with invisibility. Honestly, I think a better move for dodge would have been to just make it so that abilities activated by it, such as invis, only work every other dodge rather than increasing that cooldown as a whole. But hey, I'll still take it. This will, at the very least, hurt Wormhusk users, which I'm more than okay with. Next up, they also talk about Touch of Thunder. So with update 6.3.0 at the launch of Season 19, we reduced the linger time of Touch of Thunder's enhanced storm grenades, but this hasn't meaningfully moved the needle on their potency or usage across game modes. so we're taking a harder swing here. We're reducing the damage dealt by each lightning strike by 25% and making it significantly easier to avoid the roaming storm by decreasing its tracking speed and distance, especially near the start of its lifetime. Touch of Thunder Storm Grenade. Secondary strike damage reduced from 40 to 30, added a 0.24 second delay between the grenade's initial strike on impact and the creation of the roaming storm. The roaming storm's travel speed now begins at 1.5 meters per second and ramps up over 1.3 seconds to a maximum of 3 meters per second. This previously traveled at a flat 3.5 meters per second. Jesus, no wonder it was so quick. The roaming storm's target search range now increases over 2 seconds after creation rather than starting at full size. Yeah, this is also a good move, but to be perfectly honest, I would have preferred if they just left the grenade's damage as is and just removed its tracking completely inside of PvP. That's something that doesn't really need to be there, and the tracking was always the biggest issue on it, but either way, I'll take what I can get here. Next up, and this is a big one, they talk about sliding. So in August 2021, with update 5.3.0, we added weapon penalties that affected the player while sliding. The goal of this change was to reduce the percentage of engagements where the outcome was effectively decided by sliding, especially when used with shotguns that instantly ended the fight from significant range. Shotguns and other weapons have been tuned since then, and we've implemented skill-based matchmaking into the Crucible, so we're removing the slide penalties in order to improve the feel and consistency of combat. Remove stability, flinch, and shotgun pellet spread penalties while sliding. It's important to note that these changes are a first step towards where we want to be with ability potency and uptime with Lightfall and beyond. We have large-scale ability balancing tuning in the works, and we will have more to share in the near future. Man, Bungie's really trying to get my faith back here. Here's the thing, the slide nerf wasn't needed in the first place, and it should have been reversed a lot sooner, but hey, better is later than never. Unfortunately, I do now have to completely redo my Rose review that I've been working on because, well, slide shot just became a whole lot more relevant. Now let's talk about the not so good part, matchmaking. So from the TWAB, we've experimented a lot with various matchmaking tools through the years to help make PvP more enjoyable for all. Earlier last year, we spoke about what the team had in their sights for future changes. So here's what they had to say about matchmaking. In previous TWABs, we have talked about our goals to make Crucible an accessible and fair activity for all players and how we plan to accomplish those goals with matchmaking. In Season 18, we added a loose form of skill-based matchmaking to Control. We gathered data, reviewed the analytics, and adjusted the matchmaking configs, establishing the foundation for Season 19's matchmaking for Quick Play, Iron Banner, and competitive 3v3. In Season 19, we added Fireteam-based matchmaking, and as before, we will continue reviewing the analytics and player feedback to adjust our configs as necessary. Fireteam-based matchmaking is the first step towards enabling a fair playing field for fire teams of all sizes and eliminating the need for freelance nodes. As we grow more confident in our settings, expect to see fewer freelance nodes beginning with Iron Banner. We know that it may seem a little jarring written out in text like that, but this is a part of the process for long-term goals that will improve the experience across the board. After we've gotten sufficient data on this from players and from internal systems, we will extend the Fireteam matchmaking feature to trials and eventually competitive 3v3. Once we have ironed out the kinks associated with Fireteam-based matchmaking, the next feature on deck is dynamic skill matchmaking. As mentioned before, this feature is geared towards improving matchmaking if you are in a low population skill bracket or during a particularly low population time. This is all to say, we are aware of the current status of matchmaking and we are continually working toward improving our features and systems. We believe that we are on the right track, and we would like to share some of the data that makes us believe as much. One such data point is match outcome prediction. We use a particular algorithm that considers multiple variables to predict the outcome of a given match, where 50% prediction accuracy is considered ideal. This would mean both teams are evenly matched, and we are unable to determine the winner based on statistics alone. The graph below, Figure A, displays our prediction accuracy for Control before and after Season 18, when we introduced loose skill-based matchmaking. The drop in accuracy is a strong indicator that our current implementation of skill-based matchmaking is headed in the right direction. Additionally, the following graph, Figure B, displays our prediction accuracy for Glory pre-Season 19 and competitive 3v3 Season 19. The upper lines are the main Glory and competitive activities, while the bottom lines are freelance variants. With Season 19, we adjusted the skill bands for matchmaking and competitive, leading to a significant drop in prediction accuracy, i.e., matches are becoming fairer. Note that there is still a strong discrepancy between the main node and freelance. This shows it's more difficult to produce fair matches with fire teams due to the immeasurable advantages that a fire team possesses: communication, team composition, team synergy, etc. However, that is why we are testing fire team-based matchmaking. We aim to reach a point where matches in the main node, where mixed fire team sizes can queue together, reach levels of fairness comparable to the freelance node, at which point we can confidently shelve the freelance nodes. Hopefully, this provides some insight into our efforts to make the Crucible a fair, accessible, and fun experience for all players. This is an ongoing process, so please pardon the dust as we build toward a better future. Now listen guys, I don't have a problem with certain types of SBMM. I don't have a problem with outlier protection, so new players or players with extremely low stats don't match against top tier players. But outside of that, it isn't something that needs to be in casual modes, and comp should really have a true ladder-based system, period. I should note here as well, I am not an elite player by any means, but I'll take consistently having an ideal connection over consistently getting fair matches any day of the week. Lag is always more frustrating than playing against someone better than you, and Crucible is a laggy mess right now. On top of that, here's the issue with the statistics they're showing. It doesn't take into account how player performance is affected by issues such as frequently bad connections. That by itself could drastically affect how unpredictable they want matches to be. For that matter, Bungie even admits that they're also having trouble making matches fair if people are playing in parties, and that there is a big discrepancy between the main node and freelance. Now, True Vanguard did an excellent video on all of this that I'll link in the description, and you should go watch it. Basically breaking down how it appears Destiny 2 may be outright forcing wins and losses. Of course, it's all speculation at this point, but as he pointed out in his video, other games have just done that, Call of Duty probably being the most notable. This is something I've noticed myself. I'll have a couple of easy matches where I'm just ripping the other team apart, immediately followed by 2 or 3 matches where I'm fighting for my life the entire time. He also discusses how Bungie conveniently failed to discuss other community concerns, such as connection quality and stability, as well as how the graph they included directly correlates with when a significant chunk of the player base, around 20% or so, dipped out. But one thing that he didn't bring up, and I haven't seen enough people discussing, is how SBMM was used in this TWAB. Notice that when they talked about improving things such as AE or reversing the slide nerf, they used having SBMM as the reason. I don't like this, no one should. This is another attempt at trying to make something, SBMM, sound good when it isn't. It feels like they're just dangling a carrot in front of us here, like, hey guys, yeah, you can have your movement back. All that we ask is that you all suddenly start liking SBMM. I don't like it, no one should. In fact, this is something we really should be keeping a close eye on in the future. Using SBMM like that feels a whole lot like they're weaponizing it against us. AE being improved, the slide nerf being reversed, pulse rifles being nerfed, all of that is the product of players saying, we don't like this, not SBMM. It's because the community as a whole has put tremendous pressure on Bungie to fix those things, not because of SBMM. For that matter, SBMM is something that the majority of the PvP community has been complaining about every bit as much as those other things, specifically because connections have become so incredibly awful, and because what should be a casual mode is now sweatier than comp and sweatier than trials. Inside of casual modes, connection-based matchmaking is and should always be king, and I will die on that hill. These other changes are great. This TWAB as a whole is a win, but until connections improve, their effects will be limited. This goes for FBMM as well. I don't like matching full stacks, but I'd rather match a full stack and know that my connection will be solid than never match full stacks and risk having people teleporting everywhere or having, shooting someone 3 times in the head just to have them teleport 30 yards away from me. Unless they can guarantee that my connections will always consistently be good inside of FBMM, then I'd rather just keep our freelance playlists and maybe even see them added to Control and Trials as a permanent addition rather than lose connection quality. So there's your TWAB, guys. As a whole, this was a big step in the right direction. But until connection takes priority, particularly in Quick Play and Iron Banner, this is a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation. That being said, this has restored some of my faith in Bungie. The other changes listed are solid, and I'm excited to see them play out. But that's all for me today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comments, and leave me your thoughts as well. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. It really does help me out. And I will see you all in the next video. Peace.